The massive alien ship appeared above Earth on a quiet Tuesday morning in April 2157. Its sudden arrival sent waves of panic through every major city on the planet. The ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built. It stretched nearly 10 miles long and gleamed like polished silver in the sunlight. Lisa Martinez stood at the window of the United Earth Defense Headquarters, her hands clasped behind her back. As Earth's chief ambassador, she had trained for first contact scenarios, but nothing could have truly prepared her for this moment. The alien vessel hanging in the sky looked like it could swallow an entire aircraft carrier fleet. "They're broadcasting again," said Captain Daniel Wright, his voice tight with tension. The military advisor's uniform was crisp, but his fingers drummed nervously on the command console. Same frequency as before. The alien message filled the room once more, translated by their most advanced computers. "Attention Earth representatives. The Galactic Space Council demands your immediate response. Delay will be seen as hostility." Lisa took a deep breath. "Open the channel," she said. The communications officer nodded and pressed several buttons. "This is Ambassador Lisa Martinez of Earth. We receive you and wish to open peaceful dialogue." There was a pause. Then the screen lit up with the image of the alien council chamber. 5 different species sat around a curved table, but the one in the center immediately drew everyone's attention. The alien was tall and serpentine, with iridescent scales and multiple sets of eyes. This was High Counselor Zexkar of the Vraxian Empire. "Earth representatives," the alien's voice was smooth but cold. "You stand before the Galactic Space Council. We have observed your civilization's development and determined you require guidance." Lisa kept her voice steady. "We appreciate your interest in Earth, High Counselor. However, we are an independent species capable of determining our own path." The alien's multiple eyes blinked in what seemed like amusement. "You misunderstand, Ambassador. This is not a negotiation. The Council has already voted. Earth will be incorporated into the Galactic Space Council under Vraxian supervision. Your technological development is primitive. Your social structures are chaotic. Your military capabilities are negligible." Captain Wright stepped forward, his face reddening. "With all due respect, Counselor, Earth's independence is not up for debate." Another alien, this one with crystalline features, spoke up. "You possess barely functional fusion drives. Your weapon systems are based on crude projectiles and chemical explosives. The Council's decision is based on millennia of experience integrating developing species." Lisa felt her heart racing, but kept her diplomatic mask in place. "Our technology may not match yours, but humanity has rights. We have our own cultures, our own governments, our own ways of life." "Primitive rights," Zexkar said dismissively. "The Council has seen countless species like yours. Your resistance to authority will be corrected. Your chaotic tendencies will be properly channeled. This is for your own benefit." The tension in the room grew thicker. General Maria Reyes, who had been silent until now, spoke up from her position near the door. "And if we refuse this generous offer?" The alien council members exchanged glances that somehow managed to seem both amused and threatening. Zexkar's scales rippled in what humans would later learn was a sign of irritation. "Refusal is not an option," the High Counselor stated. "You will be integrated. The only question is whether it happens peacefully or through force. We have ships positioned throughout your solar system. Your primitive sensors cannot detect them, but they are there." Captain Wright's hand moved unconsciously to his sidearm. "That sounds like a threat." "Merely a statement of fact," Zexkar replied. "You have 24 of your Earth hours to formally submit to Council authority. After that, we will be forced to demonstrate our superiority in ways your species may find unpleasant." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the room in stunned silence. Lisa turned to face her colleagues, her mind racing through options that all seemed equally impossible. "We need to call an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council," she said finally. And we need to prepare for war. General Reyes nodded grimly. I'll contact all major military commands. If they think humanity will just roll over and submit, they're in for a surprise. Captain Wright was already pulling up defense scenarios on his tablet. Their technology is far beyond ours, but they're overconfident. Did you notice how they practically bragged about their ships in our system? That's valuable intelligence they didn't need to share. Lisa walked back to the window, looking up at the massive alien vessel. They expect us to either submit or fight conventionally. A war they know we can't win. But humanity has never been good at doing what's expected. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Military bases worldwide went on high alert. Scientists and engineers began analyzing every scrap of data they could gather about the alien vessels. Intelligence agencies shared information freely for the first time in history. The United Earth Council convened an emergency session. Through it all, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens had made a crucial mistake. They saw Earth's diversity as chaos, their adaptability as primitive, their independence as a flaw to be corrected. They expected compliance or a doomed conventional resistance. They clearly didn't know much about human history. As the deadline approached, Lisa stood before the United Earth Council. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation, all previous conflicts forgotten in the face of this external threat. The Galactic Space Council has given us two options, she said, her voice carried to millions watching worldwide. Submit or be conquered. I propose we give them a third option, one they haven't considered. They expect either immediate surrender or a direct military confrontation. Their arrogance blinds them to other possibilities. She paused, looking around the chamber. They see our differences as weakness, our adaptability as primitive, our independence as a flaw. I say we show them how wrong they are. Humanity has faced overwhelming odds before. We've turned weaknesses into strengths. We've survived when survival seemed impossible. Captain Wright stepped forward with a preliminary strategy document. They expect us to fight like them, with rigid hierarchies and conventional tactics. We won't. Every nation, every military, every citizen will become part of the most widespread and unconventional resistance they've ever seen. The council chamber erupted in discussion, but Lisa could see the growing resolve on faces around the room. Humanity would not submit. They would not fight a conventional war they couldn't win. They would show the Galactic Space Council just how dangerous it was to underestimate Earth. As the deadline ticked closer, Lisa prepared Earth's official response. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive, chaotic species that would either surrender or be easily defeated. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The 24-hour deadline was almost up. High Counselor Zexkar sat in his command chamber aboard the massive Vraxian flagship, his scales gleaming under the soft blue lights. He fully expected the humans to submit, just as countless other species had done before them. The display screen in front of him showed the countdown. 10 minutes remaining. High Counselor, a crystal-formed Takuri officer, spoke up. We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Zexkar's multiple eyes blinked in satisfaction. Put it through. Let us witness their surrender. The screen lit up, showing Ambassador Lisa Martins. But instead of the feared expression Zexkar expected, she wore a slight smile that made him uncomfortable. Greetings, High Counselor, she said calmly. I'm here to deliver Earth's response to your ultimatum. Proceed with your submission, Zexkar said confidently. Lisa's smile grew slightly wider. Oh, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not submitting, but we're not declaring war either. Instead, we're introducing you to something we call Auction 3. Before Zexkar could respond, Mary Thompson stepped into view. She wore a simple military uniform with no obvious rank insignia. I'm the head of strategic operations, she said, and I'm here to explain how things are going to work. The High Counselor's scales rippled in anger. You dare to dictate terms to the Galactic Space Council. We dare, Mary said simply. Right now, thousands of small human ships are leaving Earth. Not military vessels, civilian craft, mining ships, even space tourism vessels. Each one is heading in a different direction. Some are going to the asteroid belt, others to the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, many more to places you haven't discovered yet. Zexkar checked his tactical display. She was right. The sensors showed countless small ships scattering across the solar system like seeds in the wind. You can't stop them all, Lisa added. Your ships are powerful, but they're big and slow. By the time you destroy one civilian vessel, 10 more will slip past you. This is meaningless, Zexkar snapped. We control this system. We have superior technology, superior weapons, superior conventional weapons, Mary interrupted. But that's not how we're going to fight. Every ship out there has its own mission, its own objectives. There's no central command for you to target, no fleet formations to engage. Just hundreds of thousands of humans doing what they do best, adapting, surviving, and causing trouble. The tactical officer, a reptilian Krall, spoke up in alarm. High Counselor, we're detecting unusual activity in the asteroid belt. The humans are. They're moving the asteroids. Mining charges, Mary explained. We've been mining asteroids for decades. Now we're using that experience differently. Some of those rocks might hit your ships. Others might not. You'll have to watch all of them to be sure. Zexkar's anger grew. You think scattered guerrilla tactics can stand against the might of the Council? We have conquered galaxies. You've conquered conventional armies, Lisa corrected. But humans aren't going to fight conventionally. Every ship captain out there has full autonomy. Every civilian vessel is being retrofitted for purposes you won't expect. We're not trying to beat you in battle. We're going to make controlling this system so difficult that it's not worth the effort. On the tactical display, the situation was growing more chaotic. Human ships were using the gravity of planets and moons to change course unpredictably. Asteroids were moving in strange patterns. Communication signals were bouncing between ships in ways that made them almost impossible to track. This is already happening around every planet and moon in our system, Mary continued. Each location will have its own resistance cell, its own tactics, its own way of making your life difficult. You won't know which civilian ship is harmless and which one is carrying surprises. A Takari science officer interrupted. High Counselor, the humans are broadcasting some kind of signal through our communication networks. It's reaching the civilian populations on Council worlds. Lisa nodded. We figured out how to piggyback on your transmission frequencies. Right now, billions of beings across Council space are learning about how your leadership demanded Earth's submission, how you threatened a peaceful planet, the truth about the great and mighty Council's first contact protocol. Zexkar slammed a clawed hand on his command console. Enough. You will submit or be destroyed. No, Mary said firmly. We won't. You can destroy some of us, but you can't destroy all of us. And every ship you destroy, every civilian you kill, will be broadcast across Council space. How long before other species start questioning the Council's authority? The tactical display was becoming even more confused. Human ships were now using the sun's radiation to mask their movements. Others were diving into gas-giant atmospheres where sensors couldn't track them. Mining vessels were creating clouds of debris that played havoc with targeting systems. You have 1 hour, Lisa announced. 1 hour to withdraw your ships and recognize Earth's independence. After that, Operation Chaos begins in full. Every ship out there has sealed orders. Every resistance cell has its own targets, and you won't be able to stop them all. This is madness, Zexkar hissed. You would throw away countless lives in a futile resistance. No, Mary replied. We're going to save lives by showing you that some species can't be controlled. You can either accept that and work with us as equals, or you can waste resources trying to control an uncontrollable situation. The tactical officer's voice was growing more concerned. High Counselor, we're losing track of 60% of the human vessels. Their movement patterns make no sense. And the asteroid situation. 1 hour, Lisa repeated. Choose wisely. The transmission cut off. Zexkar stared at the tactical display in growing frustration. The neat, orderly invasion they had planned was dissolving into chaos. Human ships were everywhere and nowhere. Civilian vessels were becoming military problems, and the Council's mighty warships were being forced to deal with altered asteroids and debris fields. In the Council chamber, the other representatives were growing restless. The Tekeri counselor spoke first. Perhaps we should consider their offer. The economic cost of controlling the system under these conditions. Impossible, Zexkar snapped. No primitive species can dictate terms to the Council. But as he watched the tactical display grow more chaotic with each passing minute, a new emotion crept into his mind. Doubt. The humans weren't fighting back. They were changing the entire nature of the conflict. Their strategy wasn't to win battles, but to make victory itself impossible to achieve. For the first time in his long career, High Counselor Zexkar faced an enemy that didn't play by any rules he understood, and the clock was ticking down to whatever Operation Chaos would bring. The humans had promised only one thing. The situation would get much, much worse. And as Zexkar watched his neat tactical display dissolve into confusion, he began to believe them. Commander Eric Powell sat in the darkness of his small ship, floating silently among the rings of Saturn. Around him, 20 other vessels waited, their engines cold, their systems running on minimal power. To any advanced alien sensors, they looked like just more chunks of ice and rock in the vast ring system. All ships, check in, he whispered into his comm unit, though he knew the whisper wasn't necessary in space. Old habits died hard. One by one, the ships responded with simple light signals, brief flashes that looked like ice crystals reflecting sunlight. The alien warship wouldn't notice anything unusual. They never did. "Here it comes," said his sensor operator, Amy Chen. "Right on schedule." The massive Vraxian patrol ship moved slowly through the rings, its powerful sensors sweeping for any sign of human activity. It was the third patrol this week, and like the others, it was about to have a very bad day. "Remember," Eric said to his fleet, "just like we practiced. No heroics, no glory-seeking. Hit and run, then disappear back into the rings." The alien ship drew closer. Eric could see its gleaming hull through his viewport, so confident in its superior technology that it didn't even bother with evasive maneuvers. Why should it? No human weapon could pierce its shields. "Now," Eric ordered. 21 mining charges exploded simultaneously, not aimed at the ship itself. That would have been useless, but at the ice and rock around it. Thousands of pieces of debris suddenly surrounded the alien vessel, moving at high speed in every direction. Their shields easily deflected the smaller pieces, but that wasn't the point. "Second wave," Eric commanded. His ships, hidden among the debris, each launched what looked like simple communication satellites. The devices attached themselves to the larger chunks of rock and ice that were now bouncing off the alien ship's shields. The Vraxian vessel's command crew probably barely noticed the impacts. Their shields were holding perfectly, but they couldn't know that each piece of debris now carried a small device that was sending out conflicting sensor readings. "They're getting confused," Amy reported with a grin. "Their sensors are showing hundreds of possible human ships in every direction." Eric nodded. This was why they called it Operation Ghost Fleet. The aliens relied too heavily on their advanced sensors, never considering that humanity would find ways to fool them rather than fight them directly. The Vraxian ship stopped, probably trying to make sense of the contradictory readings. That's when Phase 3 began. "Launch the miners," Eric ordered. Small, automated mining drones shot out from his ships, each one programmed to do what humanity had been doing in the asteroid belt for decades: drill holes. They attacked the larger pieces of debris around the alien ship, boring into them at high speed. The aliens, focused on their malfunctioning sensors, didn't notice that the debris field was changing. Pieces were getting smaller, creating a fine cloud of dust and ice particles. Their mighty shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and solid objects, couldn't stop the microscopic particles. Their engines are getting clogged, Amy reported. Shield generators are straining to filter out the dust. Eric watched as the proud alien warship began to slow, its engines struggling against the artificial dust storm they had created. It was like watching a mighty lion being taken down by a swarm of ants. "All ships, scatter and go dark," he ordered. "Standard exit pattern." His small fleet vanished back into Saturn's rings, leaving behind a disabled alien warship and a lot of confused Braxian officers who would have to explain to their superiors how they were defeated by mining equipment. 12 hours later, Eric sat in a secure briefing room on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The base was buried deep under the moon's surface, hidden from alien sensors by the thick ice and liquid methane above. Space Commander Susan Baker, who coordinated all operations in the outer solar system, looked pleased. 3 Vraxian warships disabled this week, and not a single shot fired, she said. "Well done, Commander Powell." "The mining drone strategy is working better than we hoped," Eric replied. "They still haven't figured out how to counter it." "Of course they haven't," Susan said with a smile. "They're thinking like a superior military force, not like a bunch of creative engineers and miners. That's their weakness." She pulled up a holographic map of the solar system. Red dots showed disabled or retreating alien ships. Green dots showed human resistance cells. The red dots were becoming more numerous. "The Jupiter teams are using the radiation belts to hide in," Susan explained. "The Mars group is using dust storms as cover. The asteroid belt is complete chaos. They can't tell which rocks are natural and which ones we've modified. And the aliens still can't figure out our command structure," Eric added. "Because there isn't one. Not really. Each cell operates independently." Susan nodded. "They're looking for a central command to target, a leadership structure to disrupt. Instead, they're fighting thousands of small groups, each with their own tactics and strategies." A young lieutenant rushed into the room. "Commander Baker, we're picking up transmissions from the Vraxian fleet. They're pulling back to the outer system." Eric and Susan shared a look. The guerrilla tactics were working better than anyone had expected. The mighty alien warships, unable to effectively fight an enemy they couldn't see or predict, were retreating to safe distance to reassess their strategy. "They'll be back," Eric said, "probably with new countermeasures. And we'll have new tricks ready," Susan replied. "That's the beauty of our approach. We're not trying to beat them in direct combat. We're just making it too frustrating and expensive for them to maintain control." She looked at the holographic map again, watching as more red dots moved away from Earth. The Council thought they were dealing with a primitive species that would either submit or fight a conventional war. Instead, they got thousands of independent resistance cells, each one using mining tools and civilian equipment in ways they never imagined. Eric smiled. "My grandfather used to say that humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology or our weapons, but our ability to look at something designed for one purpose and figure out how to use it for something completely different." "Like using mining drones to disable warships?" Susan asked with a grin. "Exactly. The aliens keep waiting for us to fight fair, to engage them in proper space battles. They don't understand that humans gave up on fighting fair the moment the first cavemen picked up a rock." Through the thick ice above them, they could see Saturn's rings glittering in the distant sunlight. Somewhere out there, a mighty alien warship was trying to clean space dust out of its engines, while its commanders attempted to explain how they had been defeated by mining equipment and chunks of ice. The war was far from over, but humanity had already changed the rules of the game. The Galactic Space Council was learning a hard lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest weapons, but the one who refuses to fight the way you expect them to. Director John Crawford sat in his dimly lit office beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching streams of data flow across multiple screens. As head of Earth's intelligence division, he had spent the last 3 weeks orchestrating what he called the greatest magic show in human history. "Sir," said Lieutenant Patricia Miller, entering the room with a tablet in her hand. "The Alien Communications Network just picked up our latest package." John smiled. "How long until they realize it's fake?" "They won't," Patricia said, returning the smile. "Because it's not entirely fake. That's what makes it perfect." On the main screen, they watched as their carefully crafted message spread through the Galactic Space Council's communication channels. It contained real footage of Council warships retreating from Earth's asteroid belt, combined with slightly edited sensor data, suggesting the humans had developed some kind of superweapon. "The best lies," John said, "are mostly truth. We did drive them out of the asteroid belt. But not with a superweapon," Patricia finished. "Just with thousands of modified mining drones and lots of space dust." The intelligence team had discovered something interesting about the Galactic Space Council. For all their advanced technology, they were surprisingly easy to fool. They were so confident in their superior systems that they never questioned the data they received. "How's our friend in the Vraxian fleet doing?" John asked. Patricia pulled up another screen. "Captain Rogers' messages are causing quite a stir. The Vraxians still think he's one of their supply officers. His reports about low fuel and equipment failures are making their commanders very nervous." John nodded approvingly. Ryan Rogers wasn't really a Vraxian supply officer. He was a human hacker who had figured out how to slip fake reports into the alien logistics system. Every day, he sent messages about equipment problems that didn't exist, making the alien fleet waste time and resources checking for issues that weren't real. "And the civilian broadcasts. Even better than we hoped," Patricia said. "Our messages about Council ships retreating are reaching civilian populations on at least 12 Council worlds. We're getting reports of protests on 3 of them. Seems like some species aren't happy about their mighty military being unable to handle a primitive human resistance." John stood up and walked to a large map of the solar system displayed on the wall. Red dots showed real alien ship positions. Blue dots showed the fake sensor readings they were feeding into the Council's networks. The aliens were chasing shadows, pursuing human fleets that didn't exist, while the real resistance cells struck from unexpected directions. "Any word from our friends in the Jupiter system?" he asked. Patricia checked her tablet. The repair dock trick worked perfectly. "The Vraxians found the abandoned facility exactly where we wanted them to. They spent 3 days scanning it for traps before finally sending in a team to capture it. And they found exactly what we wanted them to find. Outdated technical documents suggesting we're about to roll out some new kind of stealth technology. They're now completely focused on trying to counter a weapons system that doesn't exist." John laughed softly. "Sun Tzu would be proud. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." A young analyst rushed into the office. "Director, the Council's civilian networks are blowing up with a new rumor. Someone leaked documents suggesting that Earth offered peaceful trade relations before the Council demanded submission." "Ah," John said. "Those would be the real documents that Ambassador Martinez tried to send them 3 weeks ago. Funny how they're just now finding them." Patricia shook her head in admiration. "We're not just fighting their military, are we? We're fighting their reputation, their political unity, their confidence. The Council's greatest weakness," John explained, "is their absolute certainty that they're superior to us in every way. That makes them predictable. And predictable enemies are the easiest to fool." He pulled up another screen showing messages intercepted from various Council species. Some were asking why the mighty Council fleet couldn't defeat primitive humans. Others were questioning whether Earth should have been offered membership rather than subjugation. A few were even suggesting that if humans could resist the Council so effectively, maybe other species could too. "The Vraxians made a classic mistake," John continued. "They assumed that because our technology isn't as advanced as theirs, we wouldn't be able to understand or use their communication systems. They never considered that we'd spend more time studying how to hack their networks than trying to fight their warships." Lieutenant Miller's tablet beeped with a new alert. "Sir, we're getting some interesting chatter from the Tekeri ships. Looks like they're arguing with the Vraxian command about continuing the campaign. John checked the decoded messages. The crystal-like Takari, already uncertain about the invasion, were becoming increasingly frustrated with the Vraxian leadership. The humans' electronic warfare was driving a wedge between Council species. "Send in the next package," he ordered. "The one about the Council ships damaging civilian habitats in the asteroid belt." "But sir," Patricia said with a small grin, "their ships haven't gone anywhere near the civilian habitats." "No, they haven't. But their own sensor data will show they did, once we're done editing it. And the beauty is, they'll spend so much time trying to figure out how it happened that they won't consider that the data itself might be false." The screen showed their latest piece of digital manipulation spreading through the Council's networks. Soon, civilian populations across Council space would see evidence of their mighty fleet accidentally damaging human civilian structures that were completely untouched in reality. "The Council thinks this is a military campaign," John said, watching the false data spread. "They don't understand that we're fighting an information war. While their ships chase sensor ghosts and waste resources checking for sabotage that isn't there, we're eroding their political unity and public support." A new message flashed across the main screen. The Takari ships were officially requesting permission to withdraw from the campaign. The Vraxian leadership was furious, but they couldn't stop their allies from pulling back. "And so it begins," John said softly. "The mighty Council is starting to crack." Patricia studied the message traffic. The Vraxians are trying to suppress the spread of information, but they can't. There are too many channels, too many networks, too many ways for the truth, and our carefully crafted untruths, to spread. That's the problem with building an empire on the idea of absolute superiority, John explained. Once that image cracks, the whole thing starts to crumble. Through his office window, cut into the solid rock of the mountain, John could see other intelligence teams at work. Some were crafting new false sensor data. Others were inserting fake supply reports. Still others were spreading real images of Council ships retreating from human resistance cells. The Council had expected to fight a simple military campaign against a primitive species. Instead, they found themselves in a war where they couldn't trust their sensors, their supply lines, or even their own allies. And they still didn't understand that their biggest defeats weren't happening in space battles, but in the electronic networks they had thought were completely secure. The mighty Galactic Space Council was learning another human lesson. Sometimes the most effective weapons aren't weapons at all, but carefully crafted lies hidden within undeniable truths. High Counselor Zexkar stared at the emergency meeting chamber with all four of his eyes, his scales dulled with stress. Around the curved table, representatives from every Council species shifted uncomfortably. The mighty Galactic Space Council, ruler of 1,000 worlds, had been called together to discuss one impossible problem. Earth. "The humans must be stopped," Zexkar said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Their resistance has gone too far." The Takari representative, her crystalline form glowing with barely contained anger, spoke up. "Too far. Like your failed campaign has gone too far. 3 months of warfare. And what do we have to show for it? Disabled ships, corrupted networks, and growing unrest on our own worlds." Admiral Paul Richardson watched this exchange from Earth's new embassy station, which floated at a safe distance. The Council had agreed to this emergency meeting after the humans demonstrated their latest capability, and Paul was enjoying every moment of their discomfort. "Show them again," he said to his communications officer. The display in the Council chamber changed, showing a recording from 2 days ago. In it, a fleet of Council warships approached Mars, confident in their superior technology. Then suddenly, their engines died. Every ship, every system, simply stopped working. "Impossible," Zexkar had shouted when it first happened. But the humans had done it again and again, demonstrating their ability to remotely disable Council technology at will. What the Council didn't know, and what gave Paul a secret smile, was that this power wasn't real. The ships had been shut down by their own crews, council citizens who had become secret human allies after months of propaganda and growing doubts about their leadership. The humans are no longer merely resisting, a reptilian Krull representative said. They're threatening the very foundation of council authority. Yesterday, they broadcast evidence of our failed campaign to every civilian world in council space. Paul nodded to himself. That evidence was real. They had learned that the truth could be more damaging than any lie. Every retreat, every failed attack, every waste of resources had been carefully documented and shared. The mining guilds are refusing to support further military action, another council member reported. They claim the humans have shown more innovation in mining technology in 3 months than we have in a century. They want to trade with Earth, not fight it. Laura Stevens, Earth's new chief negotiator, stepped into view on the council's main screen. Unlike the first contact 3 months ago, this time the council members fell silent when she appeared. "Members of the Galactic Space Council," she said calmly, "3 months ago, you gave Earth 2 options, submit or be destroyed. We gave you a third option, and you chose to ignore it. Now we're giving you 2 options of our own." She paused, letting the tension build. Paul admired her technique. She had learned from studying council recordings that most species in the chamber responded strongly to dramatic pauses. "Option 1. She continued, "We can continue this conflict. You've seen that we can disable your ships. Your own analysts report that we have resistance cells on 17 council worlds. Your civilian populations are increasingly supportive of Earth. The longer this goes on, the weaker your authority becomes." The council members stirred uneasily. They had finally realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or tactics, but their ability to turn the council's own people against them. "Option 2, Laura said, her voice softening. "We can end this today. Earth will join the Galactic Space Council, not as a subject world, but as a full member with equal rights. We will share our innovations in mining technology, our adaptability, our unique approaches to problem solving. In return, you will acknowledge Earth's independence and right to self-governance. You dare to dictate terms." Zexkar tried to sound angry, but his scales betrayed his exhaustion. "We dare," Laura replied simply, "because we've proven that humanity doesn't need to match your technology to defeat you. We just need to be more creative, more adaptable, and more willing to try the unexpected." The chamber erupted in discussion. Paul watched through the video feed as species that had stood united 3 months ago now argued among themselves. The Takari were openly supporting Earth's proposal. The mining guilds were calculating potential profits. Even some Braxian colonies were demanding their leadership accept the offer. "Think carefully," Laura continued. "Every day you delay, more council citizens see the truth. That your mighty military can be frustrated by human mining tools, that your secure networks can be compromised by human hackers, that your absolute authority is not so absolute after all." Paul checked his tactical display. Right on schedule, resistance cells across council space were beginning small demonstrations. Nothing violent, just enough to show how far human influence had spread. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. They weren't just fighting Earth anymore. They were fighting an idea that was spreading through their own civilization, the idea that maybe the council's way wasn't the only way. "We will need time to discuss this," the Takari representative said finally. "You have 1 hour," Laura replied, using the same words they had once used on Earth. "After that, we move to the next phase of our operations." The screen went dark, leaving the council in stunned silence. Back on the embassy station, Paul turned to Laura. "Do you think they know? That we're bluffing about controlling their technology? That our resistance cells are mostly just civilian supporters? That we're completely exhausted and couldn't actually continue this conflict much longer?" Laura smiled. "No, because we told them so many true things that they never thought to question the false ones." They watched through the embassy's windows as the council ships hung motionless in space. 3 months ago, those ships had seemed invincible. Now they were just another example of how technology alone wasn't enough to guarantee victory. Exactly 58 minutes later, the Council sent their response. Earth would be admitted as a full member of the Galactic Space Council, with all rights and privileges that status entailed. In return, humanity would share their unique perspectives on technology and problem-solving. They still don't understand, do they? Paul asked as they read the agreement. No, Laura replied. They think we won because of clever tricks and secret technology. They don't realize that humanity's real strength isn't in our tools or our tactics. It's in our ability to look at a seemingly hopeless situation and think, well, what if we try something completely different? As the embassy station began preparations for the formal signing ceremony, news of the agreement spread across council space. And everywhere, on every world, beings looked up at their skies with new thoughts and questions. The mighty Galactic Space Council had finally met a species that refused to play by their rules. And in doing so, they had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the most primitive response to superior technology is to simply think differently about the nature of the conflict itself. Earth had won its independence not through superior weapons or advanced technology, but through creativity, adaptability, and the simple human ability to try the unexpected. And in doing so, they had changed not just their own future, but the future of the entire council. The age of absolute council authority was over. The age of innovation and adaptation had begun, and it had all started because someone had looked at an impossible ultimatum and said, what if we try option 3?